Hi, this is Kirby Anderson. You know, each day we take on the tough issues and provide a biblical perspective to them. The topics we cover are wide-ranging: apologetics, theology, prophecy, creation and evolution, intelligent design, marriage, family, child-rearing, the millennial generation, friends and society, politics, economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View starts right now. Today we're going to have a chance to hear from Rebecca St. James. Yesterday I had a chance to do an interview with her on her new book, Sarah's Choice, which is based upon the movie. I think you will really enjoy that interview, and then we will get to Representative Randy Forbes. So we have lots to cover today, and of course Friday, tomorrow, is our weekend edition. Penna Dexter, Kelly Shackelford, I've already had a chance to read her commentary, Penna's commentary, and a number of other things, so you certainly don't want to miss that program. But let's just, before we get into some of these issues, talk about my commentary even yesterday, because it really relates to what we will talk about at the first and the end of the program, and that is the issue of religious liberty. My commentary yesterday was where I was suggesting that Christians might want to rethink going into certain professions. Now, I said that in part because always that's been the case. I mean, you know, can I be the best Christian pornographer out there, the best Christian prostitute? I mean, there are certain areas where Christians would never go as a profession. But what I was doing was picking up on something that our friends at American Family Association had actually posted as a blog. The AFA blog post talked about this idea that really even the standard professions today could get you in trouble if you really take seriously your Christianity. For example, photography has always been a career that Christians have been involved with. I know all sorts of Christians in the area of photography, but you might want to rethink that or reconsider it, as I pointed out in my commentary yesterday, because a Christian photographer in New Mexico actually was fined for declining to photograph a lesbian commitment ceremony. We had a chance from Robert Knight to find out a little bit more about that. That was a complete setup. Her lesbian partner called and pretended to be a heterosexual looking for a normal, traditional marriage. Then the other partner called back asking the same questions, but now said it was for a lesbian ceremony, all an attempt to, of course, force the issue, which, of course, they did. Well, what about maybe you like to be involved in baking, you know, being a Christian baker? That's a pretty good idea. Well, there's a Christian baker in Oregon is facing both civil and criminal penalties, including jail time, for declining to bake a cake for a gay wedding ceremony, and her business was closed. What about a florist? I mean, maybe some of you like to do decorating and the rest. Well, the Attorney General in Washington right now suing a Christian florist who declined to prepare an arrangement for a gay wedding ceremony. Of course, you're starting to see a trend here, aren't you? Of course you are. But maybe you want to serve people in the hospitality arena. But you might want to reconsider being an innkeeper. In a month or two, I'm going to be up in Vermont again, and the Wildflower Inn in Vermont was fined $30,000 and forced to shut down its wedding reception business after declining to host a lesbian ceremony. And, of course, we can talk about a few others. How about a career in counseling? Well, again, there are many individuals who are Christians who are not even allowed in certain counseling programs because they are Christians. But one student was dismissed from a counseling program in Augusta State University for her religious reservations, which she expressed in class about the homosexual lifestyle. What about another one? Teacher would be the same sort of thing. A student was kicked out of the doctoral program, this time at Roosevelt University, for expressing in class her reservations about this issue, and specifically questioning whether or not homosexuals are born gay. And you can add a whole series of others. We've had Kelly Shackelford in this program before talking about, well, maybe some of you want to go into broadcasting. Well, look what happened to one individual at Fox Sports who did not even say anything on the air, did not even say anything off the air, said something in a Senate campaign when he ran against Ted Cruz and David Dewhurst and others for the U.S. Senate in Texas. And that was enough to get him thrown off the air the next day. So we are seeing more and more of these stories that are surfacing. And of course, these only come, of course, from the so-called gay activists, but they have been using those of various attempts to intimidate and marginalize Christians. Now, let's also be fair and recognize that these, at the moment, are the exceptions, not the rule. And if you are in states where this is not a big issue, you probably still have a great deal of freedom in these professions. But the trend is disturbing, to put it mildly. It illustrates again that Christians might have to start to rethink whether or not they are going to take their Christian values into the workplace, or whether they're just going to have to compromise, or else whether they're going to stand for those issues and pay a penalty, because we are seeing a growing number of cases where individuals' religious freedom is really being challenged. And we will spend a little bit of time later on the program today in the second hour now rather than the first hour talking with Randy Forbes. And one of the articles I've posted here is an article in which he wrote, "In God We Still Trust." And he recognizes the importance of the phrase, "In God We Trust," and the importance of it being our motto, and also the tendency for so many individuals now to really back away from actually establishing religious liberty. And he talks of quite a bit in this one article that we've posted, and we'll talk with him later about many of these examples in which individuals who express their Christian convictions in, I think, very appropriate ways. In every one of those cases that I used, whether we're talking about the photographer, the baker, the florist, or many others, these were people that politely declined, did not try to make a big deal about it, in some cases even offered to refer them to someone who would be glad to bake a cake, make a flower arrangement, take the photography, do the photography, whatever. But that was not enough, and they found themselves fined. And we find as we go into the military, that one has certainly been an issue. A few years ago, we were talking about the VA, not because of the scandal that's brewing right now and that we will be talking about quite a bit on Friday. We were talking about the fact that at that time they were banning the flag folding recitations at military funerals. And you might remember the very significant way in which Kelly Shackelford and his group at Liberty Institute were involved. To show you how bad it's become, they now have an 800 number just for people in the military that are losing their religious liberty, and they have full staff now just to address this issue. And one of those individuals was on with Penna just about 2 weeks ago, who was a former JAG attorney, and it just illustrates what we are dealing with in every one of these cases in terms of the loss of religious liberty. So what I want to try to do is, when we come back, talk about another very important question that is being raised, and it comes from what many people might think is a somewhat unlikely source, and that is Kirsten Powers. Kirsten Powers has, by her own admission, been an atheist most of her adult life. She's now had a conversion experience. She went to Tim Keller's church, and I won't go into all of that. She now calls herself an Orthodox Christian, which may or may not be true. I'm not even going to try to analyze her theological position. We know where she stands politically. She's been an atheist. She worked in the Clinton administration. She, most of the time, espouses liberal positions. But she wrote a column questioning whether or not the liberal thought police are going to come for you. We'll talk about that right after this.
The Point of View commentary with Kirby Anderson.
The VA scandal has been in the news for a few weeks, and you might think that the discussion about it would surface some meaningful solutions. So far, there's been some political posturing and some call for some in the Veterans Administration to resign. But the main problem in the VA isn't the leadership, it's the system. I know very good people who work at the VA, but when you put good people in a bad system, the system wins. Here are a few facts that you should consider in this scandal. The Veterans Administration is a very large bureaucracy. Former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich, put this in context. He says the VA workforce is larger than the Marine Corps. The VA treats some 6 million veterans a year at more than 1,400 different sites, including hospitals, clinics, and nursing homes. It also helps train 90,000 health professionals every year in its medical centers. Unfortunately, this government system is a tangled bureaucracy and inefficient. Michael Tanner at the Cato Institute discovered more than 344,000 claims for veterans' care are backed up and waiting to be processed. It takes an average of 160 days for a veteran to be approved for health benefits. And when someone enters a VA facility, that veteran must wait twice as long as the national average waiting time in an emergency room. And in some facilities, that wait is 12 times longer than the national average waiting time. So far, all attempts to integrate the Department of Defense and VA medical record systems have failed. This is one reason why it takes so long to transition active duty health services to VA health services. Of course, these issues aren't even at the heart of the scandal. Dozens of veterans died while waiting months for vital treatment, and VA bureaucrats covered up this unacceptable waiting time. So as you can see, the scandal is only part of a larger problem of the Veterans Administration. I'm Kirby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
You're listening to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
If you'd like to join our conversation today at any point, feel free to give us a call, 1-800-351-1212. Just a few minutes, we're going to be talking with Joe Grabowski about the March for Marriage, and that is a very important issue. And then later on, we'll be hearing from Rebecca St. James and Representative Randy Forbes. But just before we do that, I thought I would read from a column that came out a while back, op-ed piece by Kirsten Powers, and I gave you kind of the background before we went to the break. Individual that, by her own admission, had been an atheist, has had, she says, a conversion experience, but still feels that she's pretty much in the political side on the left side. That is, she has really espoused pretty much liberal and progressive positions on a lot of social and cultural issues, but nevertheless wrote this piece in USA Today asking, will liberal thought police come for you? She says, welcome to the Dark Ages Part 2. We have slipped into an age of unenlightenment when you fall in line behind the mob or face the consequences. How ironic that the persecutors this time are the so-called intellectuals. They claim to be liberal while behaving as anything but. The touchstone of liberalism is a tolerance of differing ideas, yet this mob exists to enforce conformity of thought and to delegitimize any dissent from its sanctioned worldview. Intolerance, she says, is its calling card. She goes on and says that each week seems to bring another incident. First one she talks about is the story of David and Jason Benham, who were supposed to be on that HD TV show. It was canceled simply because they were able to find some remarks that they made on a Christian talk show. Matter of fact, a talk show done by a good friend of mine not many miles from where we're broadcasting today. Nevertheless, they point out that people, quote, she says, can't have a house-flipping show unless they believe and say the right things in their life off the set. She goes on to say, in this world, the conservative Tom Selleck would never have been Magnum P.I., and you can use all sorts of other examples, and we, of course, can talk about Duck Dynasty and all the rest. So those whole series of examples exist of individuals that were denied opportunities in the media simply because they believed something or said something that got them in trouble. Then she moves into commencement. And you might have heard me talk about this. I did a commentary a while back where I went through what is a sad and very long list of individuals who were either canceled from speaking at commencements or declined because of the hubbub and the furor that was created. She uses a few other examples that I have not mentioned. For example, she says this week a trailblazing woman was felled in the new tradition of commencement shaming. And she's talking about International Monetary Fund Managing Director Christine Lagarde withdrew her from delivering the commencement speech at Smith College following protests from students and faculty who hate the IMF. According to the Foundation for Individual Rights in Education, this trend is growing. In the 21 years leading up to 2009, there were 21 incidents of an invited guest not speaking because of protest. Yet in the past 5.5 years, we have 39 cancellations. He says, don't bother to make sense of what beliefs are permitted and which ones will get you strung up in the town square. Our ideological overlords have created a minefield of inconsistency. While criticizing Islam is intolerant, insulting Christianity is sport. And she uses the example of somebody we've talked about on our roundtable a couple of weeks ago, Ayaan Hirsi Ali, who is a persona non grata at Brandeis University for attacking the Prophet Muhammad. I'm not even sure she did that, but certainly she has been critical of radical Islam and spoke out for the rights of Christians and other religious groups in Islam. But nevertheless, she was disinvited from Brandeis, just as Gene Kirkpatrick and others were disinvited years ago from Brandeis. But on the other hand, she says you have Richard Dawkins describes the Old Testament God as sadomasochistic and malevolent bully. And she says the mob yawns. Bill Maher actually calls the same God a psychotic mass murderer, and there are no boycott demands of the high-profile liberals who traffic his HBO show. And then one more example, and I'll take some phone calls from you. And this is, I think, another example of the irony. She said, we have a situation, as we've mentioned before, in March, where at the University of California at Santa Barbara, a woman studies professor attacked a 16-year-old holding a pro-life, I should say, anti-abortion sign in what is considered the campus free speech zone. Interestingly enough, she was charged with theft, battery, and vandalism. Nevertheless, she remains unrepentant and still has her job. Contrast this with Mozilla's CEO, who gave a private donation to Proposition 8 in California 6 years ago and ordered to recant his beliefs and was forced to resign from the company he helped to found. So she says, got that? A college educator with the right opinions can attack a high school student and keep her job. A corporate executive with the wrong opinions loses his for making a campaign donation. Something is very wrong here. So she concludes, as the mob gleefully destroys people's lives, its members haven't stopped to ask themselves a basic question. What happens when they come for me? If history is any guide, that's how these things usually end. Well, it's like an inquisition, except this time those who are supposed to be the champions of tolerance, liberalism, progressivism, and all of the rest are sometimes the inquisitors. So let's take some phone calls, see if you have any comments about any of that. Let's go to Antoine in Georgia. What's on your mind?
Yes, Kirby. I just wanted to comment on that column you was reading. I think what it is, I think nowadays people don't really want to hear the good news of Christ, or, they don't want to hear the truth. They rather sugarcoat things and, just keep going, going and going and going. Cause, in Matthew, I don't know the exact, chapter, but, it says, when you're for God, you're going to suffer many persecutions, so you live in if you live in a Christian life and abiding by his words and stuff, of course you're going to have all these issues, you know, because a lot of people out here today, you know, they don't want to hear that stuff. They rather, you know, like I said, they just rather, you know, just keep believing a lie or whatever.
Well, if nothing else, what you are dealing with right now is an attempt to stifle debate rather than to encourage it. And as she calls it, the Dark Ages Part 2. I don't know that this ends anytime soon, because you have a whole generation that's sort of grown up saying, well, the best way to win a debate is to prevent somebody from presenting the other side. And I've seen this happen on campuses. I've experienced it myself. I've had individuals demand equal time when I've spoken on a campus. I've had others try to prevent me from speaking, and I'm certainly not as highly visible as some of these other individuals. But that statistic is maybe one I should put in a future column. I did do a commentary on Kirsten Powers, but it's interesting to look at the fact that the number that have been disinvited in the last 5.5 years is much larger, almost 1.5 times larger than the previous 21 years before that. It tells you quite a bit indeed. Let's go back to the phones. And Mary in Texas, what would you like to share with our audience today?
What I would like to say is that I am shocked, appalled that in the African-American community, we, to some extent, have become very tolerant and indifferent. The young man that was just on the line, and he is so true that people really don't want to hear God's word. They want to go and be entertained. Now, my statement is this. You have Steve Harvey that claims to be a Christian man, to live by the Christian word. Yet this man has written a book, New York bestseller book, admonishing women, girls, what have you, that the proper time to wait to sleep with a man is 90 days, and if that happens, they will be assured a long-lasting relationship. So in that comment, he's not only telling women it's okay to fornicate, he's not only telling them, he's also telling men. He's telling men that. So...
And to be honest with you for just a minute, Mary, he probably feels like, you know, he's counterculture as it is, because most people think, oh, well, we could sleep together on the first date. So he's really, you know, setting some boundaries here, 90 days. Yeah, I'm shaking my head, but you're right. I mean, and he will be applauded in the entertainment world for that stand, and is being applauded. So,
and it's sad. It's sad that entertainment has taken the place of church and what it stands for. You know, it's so many people that want to sit out there and be entertained, and they won't ask the question. They will not ask the question that why is T.D. Jakes and Steve Harvey have a relationship, professionally and personally? It's like, what is that? What fellowship does righteousness have with unrighteousness?
You've got good questions. I unfortunately have to go to a break here, and I appreciate you putting that on the table, which is a perfect setup for what we're going to be talking about in just a few minutes, because we're going to be talking about this March for Marriage, which is certainly a stand for righteousness, a stand for biblical marriage, a stand for traditional marriage, but also an opportunity for you to participate. And it certainly relates to the conversation that we had yesterday about sexual purity and abstinence and other issues. So, Mary, you're right on target, and you sort of weave together some of the comments we had yesterday and the comments we're going to have in just a minute. But I have one of those mandatory breaks, so let's go to that. If you're just joining us, don't forget we're not only going to be talking today about the March for Marriage, but in the second hour we'll be hearing from Rebecca St. James, as well as from Representative Randy Forbes. All sorts of issues we're talking about today here on Point of View. Stay tuned. We'll cover all of those right after these messages.
You are listening to Point of View. For materials offered during the program, please write to Point of View, Post Office Box 30. That's Box 30, Dallas, Texas 75221, zip 75221. Or call our toll-free number, 1-800-347-5151. That's 1-800-347-5151. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. Point of View will continue after this. You are listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again is Kirby Anderson.
Now, for the next half hour, we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about the March for Marriage, and our previous phone call was a great setup. Well, what is happening when people are talking about sex outside of marriage, alternative views of marriage, and the rest, and it's why we need to come back to the biblical traditional view of marriage. You're going to find that we have posted quite a number of things that will help you in understanding this issue and also allow you to participate either in the march or at least in in a vicarious way. We have, first of all, an article about the Marriage March. Under our article section, we also, under our web links, have a link to the National Organization for Marriage. And to explain a little bit more about what we are talking about and what is going to be unfolding, we bring to the microphone Joe Grabowski. He is the Director of Communications for the National Organization for Marriage. He has a bachelor's degree in philosophy from St. Charles Seminary, a master's in English from Marquette University, Director of Communications, an individual that will help us understand what is going to be taking place very shortly and how you can be involved. So, Joe, thank you for joining us today here on Point of View.
Thanks for having me, Kirby.
Let's, if we can, maybe have you talk a little bit about this march, because I know that some of our listeners may want to actually attend, but there are ways for all of us in one way or another to participate through the internet. So talk about what is going to be taking place.
Well, thanks. The main event is the March for Marriage in Washington, D.C., and that will take place beginning at 11 a.m. on June 19th of this year, and that will begin at the west lawn of the Capitol building in D.C., and we're going to have a 2-hour rally there featuring some great speakers, which I can talk about a little more in a bit.
Sure.
But following the rally, we'll have a march around the Capitol building up to the Supreme Court, where the events there will end at around 2 p.m. in the afternoon. Following that, we're going to give the opportunity to people to participate in a lobby day, where if they contact us on the website, which is marriagemarch.org, we'll set up meetings for them to meet on Capitol Hill with their elected representatives, and they can voice their concerns about the issue of marriage in in-person meetings with their federal legislators. Now, in addition to what we're doing in Washington, D.C. on the 19th, we're offering an opportunity for a virtual march engagement. That's for people that can't make it. And what we're encouraging people to do in that case is either plan their own meeting, their own rally, whether it be in a local church or at their local city hall or capitol or federal courthouse or something of that nature, and to make some signs using the branding for the March for Marriage to show solidarity with the movement from wherever they happen to be, and take pictures and post them to social media and email them to us so that we can share those pictures as well, so that we can really show the media in a compelling way that this is a national movement, that there is a great grassroots support for the institution of marriage across our nation.
Good points. And first of all, let me just say to all of our listeners, so often we encourage you to go to a conference, maybe attend a rally, go to a pro-life march or whatever, and we recognize when I say that more than 90% of you are going to say, well, yeah, I wish I could get on an airplane and fly to Washington, D.C. or wherever that might be and participate. And that is not going to probably be what most of you can do. We understand that. And so this is an opportunity for you to participate in your community. So in some respects, it reminds me a little bit of some of the rallies we did for Chick-fil-A, or to encourage you to go to your local Hobby Lobby, because as Joe was talking about here, you can actually participate in a virtual march, and that I think is going to be very significant. Also, of course, I believe, Joe, people, if they can't attend, can they watch some of this online? Because you have an incredible lineup of speakers, which I want to talk about in just a minute. But how else can people connect up with the national march that will be taking place there on the 19th?
Yes, we are planning to have a live stream of the rally events, so that they can tune in live from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern Time on the day of the march, and then hopefully we'll have that material cataloged and preserved on YouTube or something where people can go and watch it after the fact if they're not able to tune in at the exact same time. Maybe if they're out on the West Coast or something like that, they'll be able to have that opportunity to participate remotely that way. But really the social media engagement is an important factor, because part of the motivation behind the march is precisely to show the broadness and the depth of the support that marriage enjoys across the country, and really counterbalance the media narrative that is often spun that this is a losing issue, that there are no longer people that support this institution, especially young people. We want to show young people around the country that far from that being the case, there's actually a great deal of young people that will be marching with us because this is a concern that they hold near and dear to their hearts.
Well, again, this is June 19th in Washington, D.C., March for Marriage. Every child deserves a mom and dad is kind of the theme, and I would encourage all of our listeners to, in one way or another, figure out how you can be a part of this. There are some of you that have the ability, especially our listeners in Maryland and Virginia, to make their way to that march. There are others of you that thought, well, maybe it would be nice to visit Washington, D.C. I've always wanted to do that, and I can get on an airplane and tie it into my vacation. But all of you have a chance to, in one way or another, participate through social media, so I really encourage you to do so. Let's, if we can, maybe talk about the lineup of speakers. I know Governor Mike Huckabee is one of your kind of keynote speakers, but work our way through the list of individuals that will actually be speaking at the rally.
Yes, as you mentioned, both the Chick-fil-A Day and Hobby Lobby, which Governor Huckabee's leadership in both cases was so influential. We're absolutely thrilled to have him as our featured speaker on the day of the march, and we really look forward to him sharing his insights about why this is such an important issue. But apart from him, again, just showing the diversity and the broadness of the coalition of support that exists for marriage. The lineup of speakers is as diverse as it is worthy and reputable. So we have figures as diverse as Archbishop Salvatore Cordileone, who is the head of the Catholic Bishops Subcommittee for the Promotion and Defense of Marriage. We have Ryan Anderson, who is a Young Heritage Fellow and the author of the great book, What is Marriage? And many people will be familiar with him and his appearances in the media.
Sure, we've had him on the program.
Piers Morgan and other. Yes. Reverend Bill Owen, Sr., who is the founder and president of the Coalition of African American Pastors and marched in the Civil Rights Movement and now is marching again with us on the 19th. Dr. Jim Garlow, who is a pastor at Skyline Wesleyan Church out in San Diego. Gary Bauer, former presidential candidate. Representative Tim Hulskamp, who is sponsoring a marriage amendment in the U.S. House of Representatives. Senator Ruben Diaz from New York, who is bringing his own mini coalition down to the march. I shouldn't even say mini. He's bringing over 100 buses of supporters down to the March for Marriage from New York City. So we're thrilled to have just such a great and diverse lineup of speakers, and I'm sure that people will find the program very encouraging, very inspiring, very edifying, and hopefully be emboldened to go back to their own communities and continue to stand up and speak out on this most important issue. I
might just mention, of course, you mentioned people like Mike Huckabee and Gary Bauer and people like that have been on the program, Jim Garlow, but also some others that have been on this program with us. Jennifer Marshall with the Heritage Foundation. Bishop Harry Jackson will be there as well. He's spoken with us. Of course, Ryan Anderson has been on the program with us. And, of course, don't want to forget the president of the National Organization for Marriage, Brian Brown. So just an incredible cast of individuals, a chance to hear from them, and if you are at that rally, you'll have a chance to hear them and probably even get a chance to shake their hand and thank them for their stand on the subject of marriage on all sorts of issues. But if you cannot attend, this is why we encourage you as you go to marriagemarch.org, and there's a link to it on our website. Matter of fact, it's a link from their article section. You will see that you can participate. You can watch the march taking place, but also we encourage you to engage in your own march in your own community, and we're giving you enough advance warning here because this does not take place till June 19th. So we really wanted to give you a chance to think about what you might do, how you might want to create some posters, how you might create some interest and buzz and put information on your Facebook page, your blog, maybe notify your church. And so this is an opportunity for us to stand for marriage and to let the communities know and let the nation know that we still believe in traditional marriage. Let's take a break. When we come back, I want to take some of your phone calls. Perhaps you have some comments about the importance of standing for marriage. Maybe you have some ideas about how we can, in our own communities, make this case for marriage and why this is an important issue to stand up for. So if you'd like to join us, we'll open up the phones again, 1-800-351-1212. If you'd like to know a little bit more, the article section talks about the Marriage March, and of course you can go to marriagemarch.org. We also have a link to the National Organization for Marriage under our web links, and you can follow that as well, and I would encourage you to do so. But if you'd like to join us, that number, 1-800-351-1212. We'll continue our conversation right after this.
Now, back to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
Talking about the Marriage March and the idea that kids deserve a mom and the dad. As we mentioned before, the march begins at 11 a.m. You'll have a chance to hear a number of speakers. Actually, the gathering even begins at 10:30. They will march to the Supreme Court, and then lobbying taking place at 2:30, Lobby Day, and then a gala at 6:30 at night. But all of us can participate through the virtual march, and you can find out more by going to the website, marriagemarch.org, or certainly the very important organization of the National Organization for Marriage. Joe Grabowski with us, and he is the Director of Communications. And let's take some phone calls as we talk about this Marriage March and the importance of marriage in our family. In our communities as well as in our country. Let's talk with Jerome in South Carolina.
Good evening, sir. How are you doing?
Very good. What would you like to share with us?
Well, no, I was just curious about the caller that talked about Steve Harvey and T.D. Jakes. I think that a lot of time when we allow other folks to express their values and we buy into it, it makes us just as bad as those persons. As a nation of believers, we have not spent a lot of time because supposedly we are a Christian nation, and yet we don't always espouse the Christian philosophies.
Right. I think what you're kind of saying is that when we don't speak out and we're silent, we sort of give tacit approval to.
Yes, sir.
Yes, go for it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We did that. That we do. We allow bad people to speak for us when we don't say anything.
Well, and this is why I wanted to give people a mechanism. This is just one of many, but it's one to consider, and that is what you might want to do on June 19th in your own community, and to say, you know, we disagree with some of the things that we are hearing on television, in the radio, that we read about in our newspapers, that we see portrayed in various entertainment programs. We stand for biblical values. We stand for traditional values. And this is a simple but a very important step. And so I hope that you, as well as all of our listeners, find some way they can participate, if not directly in the march on June 19th, somehow participate in the virtual march that they have put together. So thank you so very much for sharing that very important point. Sometimes we give approval to evil, to approval to immoral ideas, because we don't speak up and contradict them. And so in a sense, we give tacit approval to those. So Jerome, thank you for calling. I hope you call again.
Thank you for taking my call.
What are your thoughts, Joe? It seems to me that this is a great opportunity for individuals to recognize that they need to take a stand for marriage, and it's a simple, concrete way that we can maybe interrupt this kind of secular, pro-homosexual filibuster that seems to be taking place right now in the media.
Yes, it is. It's a unique opportunity to come together in a kind of forum where people can feel mutually encouraged and, bolstered by one another's presence and just a positive atmosphere. Because too often I think that when we engage these debates around the water cooler or wherever it happens to be, it can be a very lonely, or it can feel very lonely to do so. And so we want to offer people, a great opportunity for fellowship, for camaraderie, coming together with so many thousands of marriage supporters from all across the nation, from so many different backgrounds, and to really see that this is a movement that builds unity. It's a value that brings people together across all kinds of divisive barriers and lines, because it's just common sense wisdom that kids deserve a mom and a dad. So, I really do encourage people to do their best to take advantage of that opportunity and come to D.C. to be part of this great event, and also to learn, because the quality of the great speakers that we have will provide precisely what that the gentleman caller was talking about, that will provide for our listeners and for the people attending the rally the right kind of messaging to use to go back into their communities and engage these debates in a more productive, more fruitful, and more charitable way.
We'll see if when we get closer to that date, if there's a way we can play some of the excerpts from it or play them after the fact. Certainly, again, we can learn from these individuals, many of whom have been on this program before. But I'm looking forward to what will happen on June 19th. Let's go back to the phones real quickly before we run out of time, and that is to go to Georgia this time. Bobby, thank you for joining us today.
Prophet, how you doing today?
I would love to hear from you. What would you like to share with us?
Well, Paul said we're better to marry than to burn. And the bed is under fire. Marriage should be between man and woman. And all this stuff that T.J. Webb talking about is ungodly. I don't know. I never was a T.J. Webb man. I don't like the way he do things on the big time TV ministry, but I don't have nothing against him. I love him, but just some of the things I just don't follow him on what he do in the community. But we got to, as Christians, we got to go directly. Every scripture in that Holy Bible is written from holy men of God. And all of them come by the inspiration of God, and we got to go directly like we're supposed to be taught about holy scriptures in the Bible. We can't add or take away. So we must go forward and teach the true Christian people into the world.
Yeah, I think we got it. I'm getting a little close on time here, but Bobby, thank you for the admonition. And just before we let you go, Joe, let's talk again about how everybody can connect up. I'm a little tight on time, so I wanted to give you at least a minute or two to talk about all the different events. We've talked about the march. We've talked about also Lobby Day and the gala. But for many of our listeners, there is this virtual march, and there is a place on your website, it looks like, where they can sign up. But then again, explain how the activists in our listening audience, of which we have quite a number, how they can take this idea of the march and of the March for Marriage to their own communities. So what does that entail?
Well, what that would entail, first of all, is to go to the website, marriagemarch.org, and to click on the register button up at the top and send us an email and let us know. We'll be in touch with you if you click the virtual march button and, send an email to marriagemarch@nationformarriage.org is another way of getting in touch with us. And let us know that you're planning to do something in your community, and we will do our best to support you in those efforts and to give you the right kind of advice that you'll need to get something underway. And then just browse around the website and, discover some of the great resources that we have there. We have talking points and different kind of messaging strategies that people can use. There's a shop where you can buy T-shirts and signs and things with the logo so that you can have those at your rally to show that you're united, even though you're unable to be physically present with us in D.C., that you're united to this large national movement. And be sure to send those pictures into us as you take them on your smartphones. Tweet them out with our hashtag and tag NOM on Twitter. And we'll do our best to just create a large coalition effort on the 19th so that we can really show that, again, this is something bringing people together from all kinds of walks of life and all different backgrounds, but also from across the nation, even those that can only remotely participate and be with us in prayer and in spirit.
Let me just again mention that there are some things that I hope our activists, and I'm talking to you right now out there in the listening audience, can do. You could hold a rally in your community. We're giving you weeks ahead of time to pull this off. You could write, of course, encourage people to write letters to the editor and maybe engage social media and local media in that regard, and even talk about maybe the possibility that while they're in the midst of lobbying various individuals in Congress, you could also be lobbying and visiting legislators in your community about these issues. So please take the opportunity, since we've given you an advance notice long before this is taking place. I hope that as many of you as possible will participate in one way or another. Those of you that can make it to the Capitol on June 19th, you will be blessed to hear some of those speakers, but all of us, whether we can make it to Washington, D.C. on June 19th or not, have an opportunity to take this idea and to have a positive impact on our local community. So, Joe, thank you for joining us today. Say hi to Brian Brown and all the people there at the National Organization for Marriage.
Will do. Thanks for having me.
Let's take a break, and when we come back, we're going to have a chance to hear from, first, Rebecca St. James. We'll be talking about her new book, Sarah's Choice, which is based upon the film that she was in. We actually have a trailer of that on our website. And then we rescheduled Representative Randy Forbes, who was supposed to be with us in the first hour. He will be with us in the last half of the second hour as we talk about these issues of religious liberty. If you'd like to know more about these issues we've been talking about today here on Point of View, go to the website pointofview.net. You will have all sorts of great resources that you will find there, articles, books, videos, and much more. Take the time to use those, and most importantly, take the time to consider what you might do on June 19th for this March for Marriage. Let's take a break. We'll come back and hear from Rebecca St. James. That coming up right after this.
Across the nation, this is Point of View. For materials offered during the broadcast, please write to Point of View, Post Office Box 30. That's Box 30, Dallas, Texas 75221. Zip 75221. Or call our toll-free number 1-800-347-5151. Point of View will continue after this.
Point of View is produced by Point of View Ministries and is supported by your generous tax-deductible contributions.
I just thank God for y'all. I listen to you every day, truly. I wanted to thank y'all for everything you do each day to inform Christian families and our community about the things we can do, and just the way you're so informative. I listen to you daily and love you guys and appreciate you so much.
God bless you, Kirby, for keeping this show so on track and for the decades of wonderful help to this nation that Point of View has been. We're all big fans of your work, and we pray that God will just prosper it.
As a Christian, over the years that I've followed this program, I am constantly challenged to be on guard and to evaluate what's going on, and if for no other reason, to protect the caliber and the truth of your programming, I need to participate and to back your program financially to ensure that the truth stays out there for people to hear, to view, and to be a part of.
This is Point of View Radio.
Jesus, I love you, how I adore you. much I love you, how I adore you. I can't stop thinking about you.
Hi, this is Kirby Anderson. You know, each day we take on the tough issues and provide a biblical perspective to them. The topics we cover are wide-ranging: apologetics, theology, prophecy, creation and evolution, intelligent design, marriage, family, child-rearing, the millennial generation, trends in society, politics, economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View starts right now.
Across America, live, this is Point of View. And now, Kirby Anderson.
We're now privileged to talk with Rebecca St. James. She is both a Grammy and multiple Dove Award-winning recipient, as well as a best-selling author of such books as Wait for Me and What Is He Thinking? You might remember her in her leading role in the pro-life film Sarah's Choice, which won critical acclaim. And we're going to be talking about the book that is now available. She's also a passionate spokesperson for Compassion International. How appropriate, since just recently we talked with Dr. Scott Todd of Compassion International. Because of her involvement, more than 30,000 children have found sponsorship through Rebecca's worldwide concerts. Rebecca St. James, welcome back to Point of View.
Thank you, Kirby, and thank you for that lovely introduction. You're very kind.
Well, I remember the first time we met at, I think it was a National Religious Broadcasters Convention, followed your career, and you have been so successful these years, and it was just a delight to think about the fact that this movie that certainly has had an impact is in book form, and I would love to maybe, for just before we get into the book, just talk about your pro-life convictions, because it has been demonstrated on everything from abortion to things like Compassion International. You have a real dedication to exposing and promoting this idea of the sanctity of human life.
Yeah. Well, I think God really birthed that, actually, as a young girl growing up in Australia. I always had a heart for children, and specifically for those in need. And, you know, working with Compassion, that was just a no-brainer. I love their ministry, and it's so effective, so powerful. And then working with the pro-life movement, you know, I'm passionately pro-life, the oldest of 7 children, and love babies. Actually have my own 3-month-old now. Yeah, I got married 3 years ago, and my husband and I just had a baby, and that has only made me more passionate. But really, I think God especially ignited my heart for the pro-life message about 4 years ago, when I played the lead role in Sarah's Choice of this unmarried pregnant girl, and it propelled me into ministry with pregnancy centers, and it was just so wonderful.
I do love the ministry of pregnancy centers. My wife and my family will tell you probably speak at more pregnancy center banquets than anything else, because it is a great ministry to not only save babies, but to save souls. It's a great evangelistic outreach. It's a way in which these thousands of women that unfortunately grow up every day and think that the only answer to their problem is an abortion, to give them an alternative. And so I appreciate the fact that not only as you speak from your concerts, but as you have participated in the film and co-authored this book with Nancy Rue, you're really addressing the pro-life issue that so desperately needs attention. So again, thank you for all that you are doing in that regard.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Let's, we can kind of tell a little bit of the story of Sarah's Choice. The idea is you have Sarah Collins, about ready to receive a promotion. Everything's going pretty good. But then all of a sudden she discovers she's pregnant. And like the thousands of women who all of a sudden recognize that they have, from their point of view, a crisis pregnancy, you now take her through the experience of the various voices that are out there that say you need to get rid of this child. No, you need to save this child. Do you have a way to support yourself? What about the man involved? Is he going to marry you and become a husband? Sarah's dealing with all those choices, isn't she?
Yeah, she sure is. She grew up in a Christian family, but her father passed away when she was young, and she's kind of held that, she's blamed God for that. And so she has really abandoned her faith, so definitely not living as any kind of believer when the book starts. So that really kind of, opens up the battle in her head. She knows really what's right, but she's not sure that she wants to choose life. And so she's got a coworker telling her to have an abortion, but her family is telling her to choose life. And there's a lot of conflict, a lot of stress, a lot of fear. And the beauty is that she ends up experiencing the love of God through actually some visions, kind of like Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. Yes. She has these 3 visions of what it would be like if she chooses life. So she gets to see her future daughter at 6 weeks old and 6 years old, and then grown with her own baby. So it's a heartwarming story. It doesn't feel heavy. It doesn't. For a topic that is kind of pretty loaded in our culture today, it's a very relational, easy read book, but you're learning while you're reading.
Oh, and again, so you wish we could do something like this to give people a Charles Dickens Christmas Carol look at what would happen if they kept their child, and to see all that they would be able to do. It's a wonderful plot device, and it's something I wish we had in all of our mobile clinics and our pregnancy centers. We have sonograms and things like that to show there's a baby there, but to really show them what they are missing, because unfortunately the voices of death, those who are promoting abortion, say, well, this is just a problem. It's not a human being. It's a good way to get rid of your problem. It's a good way to allow you to go on with your career. And of course, Sarah is already dealing with a car, an apartment, and a really exciting life. But now she gets to see that there's another part to that life, and that is by saving her child, by allowing her child to come to term, by giving birth to that child. She's starting another life and being able to see how it would actually be fulfilled right before her very eyes.
Yes, I also wish that people could look forward, and see what their life would be like with the blessing and the beauty of a child. Now being a mother, having seen my own child be placed on my chest right after birth, and the euphoria of that moment. Oh my goodness, if pregnant women in a crisis pregnancy could experience that, I think there would be no doubt in their mind what they want to do.
Well, the other issue that's weighing on her is not just the family voices, but also the fact that she has a boyfriend, Matt, but she's not sure whether or not he's mature enough to be a husband and a father. She wonders about being a single mom. That wasn't a decision that you had to make, Rebecca, because you have a very dedicated husband, but for a lot of women out there, they're struggling with whether or not they can provide for their child. But that's not reason enough for an abortion, is it?
No. And I think one of the things that I really feel passionately about, promoting the message, through this book and the movie, and when I get to speak about the pro-life message, is that, you're not alone. If you're choosing life, because there are pregnancy centers out there, even if there's not family and friend support, there's a pregnancy center that just wants to come around you, come alongside of you, and help provide everything that you need to choose life. And so I think that's an incredibly important message, and why I'm so passionate about supporting these centers.
We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we'll continue our conversation for just a few more minutes with Rebecca St. James talking about this book, which is almost 300 pages, Sarah's Choice. And the subtitle, Only One Thing Stands in the Way of Sarah's Success. But that one thing is very important. And if you have enjoyed the film, this is a book that goes with it. And it is one that you can put in the hands of young people that need to think about this issue. It certainly would be a great book to put in the hands of any woman who is convinced that she is in the midst of a crisis pregnancy and has no alternative other than abortion. It is written by Rebecca St. James, Nancy Rue. It is published by Thomas Nelson. We have information about it on our website, and we'll continue our conversation with her right after this.
The Point of View Commentary with Kirby Anderson.
The VA scandal has been in the news for a few weeks, and you might think that the discussion about it would surface some meaningful solutions. So far, there's been some political posturing and some call for some in the Veterans Administration to resign. But the main problem in the VA isn't the leadership, it's the system. I know very good people who work at the VA, but when you put good people in a bad system, the system wins. Here are a few facts that you should consider in this scandal. The Veterans Administration is a very large bureaucracy. Former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich, put this in context. He says the VA workforce is larger than the Marine Corps. The VA treats some 6 million veterans a year at more than 1,400 different sites, including hospitals, clinics, and nursing homes. It also helps train 90,000 health professionals every year in its medical centers. Unfortunately, this government system is a tangled bureaucracy and inefficient. Michael Tanner at the Cato Institute discovered more than 344,000 claims for veterans' care are backed up and waiting to be processed. It takes an average of 160 days for a veteran to be approved for health benefits. And when someone enters a VA facility, that veteran must wait twice as long as the national average waiting time in an emergency room. And in some facilities, that wait is 12 times longer than the national average waiting time. So far, all attempts to integrate the Department of Defense and VA medical record systems have failed. This is one reason why it takes so long to transition active duty health services to VA health services. Of course, these issues aren't even at the heart of the scandal. Dozens of veterans died while waiting months for vital treatment, and VA bureaucrats covered up this unacceptable waiting time. So as you can see, the scandal is only part of a larger problem of the Veterans Administration. I'm Kirby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
You're listening to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
Rebecca St. James with us for a few more minutes as we talk about this new book, Sarah's Choice. She and Nancy Rue have written that. And I might just mention, Lila Rose has been on this program with us many times before, president of Live Action, and she says that Rebecca St. James and Nancy Rue have crafted a beautiful and moving story about how an unexpected difficulty can truly be a blessing in disguise. Anyone reading will not only be entertained but also inspired by Sarah's Choice, reveals that no matter circumstances, God does work everything for our good. Having traveled the country to speak to thousands of young people, I think this book is especially timely for the challenges many of us are facing. I'm sure this book will touch many hearts. And Rebecca, I wanted for just a minute talk about how this is a book we probably could use to hand to an abortion-minded woman or an individual that maybe has never really thought about choice in life. We certainly take individuals through the kind of the agony and the decision-making of Sarah And I think they can maybe learn some lessons vicariously from that, can't they?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I've actually seen that, happen already, used as a ministry tool through the movie. People that have come, to a theater to see the film when it first came out, or got it on DVD. Some in crisis pregnancy situations have chosen life, and I've heard those stories. So definitely the book can be used in the same way.
One of the things that we do so often here at Point of View is we kind of give people arguments for something. I tend to be somewhat of a left hemisphere logical linear person, and there is certainly a place for that, arguments for life, arguments against abortion. But I also recognize how powerful, especially to the younger generation, if you will, a right hemisphere creative sort of way of approaching the issue, and certainly the film does this, and the book does as well. I've seen some people saying that, quote, Sarah's Choice is unique in that it doesn't simply spew forth a pro-life doctrine, but closely examines the argument why abortion is wrong and doesn't make a choice a clear one. And Nancy Rue has talked about that as well, your co-author. We really are telling a story, and as people get caught up in that story, they see how it applies to their own story, and hopefully your book, as well as the movie, will save many lives.
Yeah, I really think that there is something for everyone, in the book, because even if you're not, struggling with Sarah's situation, all of us have really heavy choices and challenging situations that happen in our lives where we have to choose, between what's right and what's wrong. And choose to honor God, even if it feels in the moment like there's, fear or challenges that may come from making the right choice. And so I think it's beneficial in that way. And then, the way that this truth is presented is in a very hopeful, compassionate way. And so I think people will really hear the love of God, through the story of Sarah.
Well, and I think your co-author, Nancy Rue, is a best-selling author, author of more than 100 different books for teens and tweens and adults, and some of them have won awards for excellence in fiction. So there is a sense in which sometimes you can get beneath a person's kind of worldview guard, kind of get to their heart, even sometimes the best way to get to their head is through their heart, and I think the book does that. I think the movie does it as well.
I agree with you. I can attest to that. In my own life, I think, has been impacted more by Christian fiction than almost anything else other than the Bible. I really believe that it's almost like it comes through the back door of your heart, and you're growing and you're learning things, and you're even kind of unaware. You're just opening yourself up to the story, and you're growing because of it.
Well, and I also see that in your music as well. I mean, there are certain songs that stay with you much longer than a sermon. I hate to admit it, but those of us that get up there in a pulpit and speak and teach, those of us that teach in Sunday school classes, we like to think people remember it. But sometimes the songs from the worship team stay with you throughout the week, and you ask, well, what did the pastor preach on Sunday? Go, let's see, let me think about that for a minute. So it does show how those are very powerful mechanisms to communicate the gospel, and you have certainly been outstanding in the way in which you've used your writing, your speaking, as well as your music to really influence a generation.
Thank you so much. I do pray that God, uses, especially this book, it's just come out, and that it uses it in people's hearts to draw them to Him and encounter His love.
One of the things I wanted to maybe have you do is maybe speak to a woman out there listening right now that doesn't see any hope. I mean, it seems to me that this is a book of hope, and there's some that are sort of like Sarah, torn between what their coworkers are saying, what their parents are saying, although her father's gone, what her relationship with Matt, her boyfriend. What would you say? Because it seems to me that this is a book to really, and the movie is really a book of hope, even in the midst of some very tough, difficult, and hard decisions that Sarah has to make.
Yes, in an extremely tough situation. And I think that the biggest lie that probably girls in crisis pregnancies believe is that they're alone. And I think the one thing that I would just say to somebody listening is you're not alone. And even if you feel like there's no immediate support in your family or friend circle turn to a crisis pregnancy center. Give them a call, and it's their delight and joy to walk with you as a friend and as sisters, to come alongside of you and help you make that right choice, and the choice of no regret. I think, you know, I was talking to a friend recently, and I think one of the more painful things in life is when regret is involved. And, you know, when you choose life, there's not regret, there's hope. And that's what I want to encourage those listening today with.
You know, I also wanted to talk about the idea of regret, because another wonderful ministry that these pregnancy centers have are those who do face regret. These are abortion-minded women who were exploited by abortion, or their male partners who are post-abortive. And another great ministry of these pregnancy centers is to help them understand that there is forgiveness, even though there will always perhaps be some regret. There is forgiveness, and that's something, Rebecca, I wanted our listeners to know as well. Find your local pregnancy resource center if you have already made that decision. We're not here to condemn you. We're here to provide hope and healing and forgiveness. True?
Yes, and I'm so thrilled that you brought that up, because it's actually one of the more powerful themes in the movie is the theme of forgiveness, which all of us need, and pregnancy centers so beautifully share that with their post-abortive recovery groups, and it's very, very, very powerful. But the book really brings that through with one of the characters, Megan, having had an abortion, and she encounters the love of God and his forgiveness, and is set free. So I'm so thrilled that you brought that up.
Well, I certainly wanted to bring that up because I know it's another theme. It's kind of a sub-theme, but it's an important one. And just before we let you go, I know you are a busy mom now. I did want to talk about how people can connect up with you. We are certainly making the book available. We encourage people to go to their local bookstore. It's a Thomas Nelson book, almost 300 pages, and they should be able to find it in their bookstore. But if not, we make it available here. We have links to Sarah's Choice, and so people can find out about the film, find out about the book. But I know that some might want to know more about what is happening in the life of Rebecca St. James, so let's talk about what they find when they land on your website.
Yeah, well, we've got a website, rsjames.com, and then people can also go to our Facebook, and we have a Twitter feed as well. And so, yeah, just Rebecca St. James at Facebook, and you can keep updated with what we're up to.
Well, again, I just want to say thank you, first of all, for your participation in the movie, and then, of course, co-authoring the book, your previous books, Wait for Me and What Is He Thinking, and, of course, the dedication that you've had over these years through Compassion International. 30,000 children have found sponsorship through your concerts. What an incredible ministry you've had. And on top of all that, and most importantly, your musical career. So we certainly thank you for all that you have done. What a great blessing you have been to the body of Christ. And thank you for joining us today here on Point of View.
Thank you so much for having me, Kobe. God bless.
Again, Rebecca St. James, and if you find yourself saying, okay, I'd like a little more information, of course, we have that at our website, pointofview.net. As you go there, you will see we have information about the book, about the film. We have links to that information, of course, her website, and much, much more, all part of our attempt to educate you about these issues. And as we were talking about just a minute ago, how important it is for us not only to have logical arguments against abortion, logical arguments for life. Those are very important. Why should I save this baby? We also recognize the ministry that a film, a music, or in this case a book, especially Christian fiction, can have, in which in some cases it kind of slips under your intellectual radar, hits you in the heart, and maybe changes your mind. So again, we think these are very effective tools. Those of you that work in pregnancy resource centers, and I commend to you this book and the film. It's just another way for you to have a very dynamic outreach in this ongoing battle for life in our country. So again, lots of great resources that we want you to have available to you. You can find them on our website, pointofview.net. You can look at the videos, you can see the articles, you can see the web links, and we hope that you'll take the time to use those resources effectively, because we are in a battle for life. And I know that there are many individuals that are living today because of the ministry that the pro-life ministry has had in their lives, the lives of their mothers. So certainly we salute all of those. We're going to take a break. We'll come back with more right after these important messages.
You are listening to Point of View. For materials offered during the program, please write to Point of View, Post Office Box 30. That's Box 30, Dallas, Texas 75221, zip 75221. Or call our toll-free number, 1-800-347-5151. That's 1-800-347-5151. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. Point of View will continue after this. You are listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again is Kirby Anderson.
Final half hour, and as I announced earlier in the program, we have an opportunity to now talk with Representative Randy Forbes, a 4th District in Virginia, elected to Congress in 2001. He has really been the stalwart defender of religious liberty, and he had a chance earlier to vote, and now we've had a chance to chat with him. He is the chairman of the Congressional Prayer Caucus. We have some information about that. We also have one of his more recent articles about In God We Trust, and we're going to be also talking about this recent decision by the court in a case related to prayer. And he is an individual that graduated from Randolph-Macon College, also graduated from the University of Virginia School of Law. And Representative Forbes, always a delight to have you on Point of View with us.
Well, Kirby, thank you. It's great to be with you.
I know you had a previous vote, and so we just simply move this to the end of the program and encourage people, if they have comments about religious liberty, we certainly would love to hear from them. 1-800-351-1212. Now, let's, if we can, talk about this case that came down from the Supreme Court a while ago, but it's still very significant, the Town of Greece versus Galloway. I know that you were very much involved in this case. There were various briefs that were filed. You were involved with that with the Congressional Prayer Caucus. But it does seem to me that this does once again reaffirm that a prayer before a public meeting, it could be a school board or it could be a city council, it could be a town hall meeting, is constitutional, even if it was just a 5-4 decision.
Well, Kirby, you're exactly right. A 5-4 decision is still a 5-4 decision, and it's a win, and that sets the precedent of the court, and that's obviously jurisdictionally binding upon the rest of the federal courts across the country. The exciting news, the optimistic thing we have is that you're exactly right. You can now have prayer before these various legislative bodies, and that's going to be huge because before it wasn't that anyone had prohibited that prayer, but the problem you had was some of these groups were taking various entities to court, and so there was this chilling effect where some of the entities didn't know what was going to happen, and some of them would stop exercising those freedom of religion expressions. This makes clear that they can do that, and so it's going to be a hugely important case. The flip side of that, though, is we do have to recognize that elections make make differences, judges make differences, and here you had 4 members of the Supreme Court that didn't think prayer should be allowed. So that's something that, make sure we're diligent and keeping our eye on that kind of activity.
When I look at the opinions, let's just quote from Justice Kennedy for just a minute. He said that the first Congress provided for the appointment of chaplains only days after approving language for the First Amendment demonstrates that the framers considered legislative prayer a benign acknowledgement of religion's role in society. He went on to say, as a practice that has long endured, legislative prayer has become part of our heritage and tradition, part of our expressive idiom, similar to the Pledge of Allegiance, inaugural prayer, or the recitation of God Save the United States in this honorable court at the opening of the court sessions. I appreciate his sentiment, but again, it's always sort of tied back to, well, since it doesn't mean that much, or since it's part of tradition, that's okay. And that's, I think, the concern for the future. We need to pay attention to who will be on the courts in the future, not only at the Supreme Court, but these federal courts, because I suspect that this could be turned around very quickly, as you just alluded to a minute ago.
No question with that, Kirby. And, we missed today because we've got all this revisionist history out there, but we really do miss how that prayer has just been part of the DNA of this country from day one. Coming from Virginia, of course, it was such an important part of our history. I mean, when Robert Hunt is the chaplain basically for pilgrims coming over here, the first thing they did was kneel down and pray at Cape Henry. There was a very diverse group of people. They couldn't agree on much of anything, but they agreed on that. And they actually had prayer time morning and evening every day. And then the first legislative body in the New World was in Jamestown, 1619. The first act they did was to go down, get down on their knees and pray. And the Continental Congress, when they were meeting, that's what they did. So it's a rich history that we have that has just permeated this country. And something we need to continue to talk about.
Well, and that's one of the things that you certainly have been addressing over the years, the importance of prayer. I want to move beyond this also to recognize that you have recognized the importance of things like the motto, "In God We Trust," why it's important to have "Under God" in the Pledge of Allegiance. There are some, Representative Forbes, that think, well, these are just small issues, but as we talk about oftentimes on Friday with Kelly Shackelford, words mean something, symbols mean something, and we should be really involved in defending those symbols and those words, because otherwise we will turn around twice and we have a secular nation that once was a Christian nation.
Kirby, so true. You know, one of the things that I hear when I go around the country is I hear people bemoaning the fact that we've taken prayer out of school, and I will quickly come back to them and say, you know, well, that may be true, but many of you have taken prayer out of your homes. Mm-hmm. And, you know, one of the places that we need to do is start putting prayer back in our homes, prayer back in our churches, and then it starts taking over. Well, the same thing is true within God We Trust. You know, we have people tell me every day, well, they're making us take all these things off the wall. We can't have Christmas trees. We can't do this. We can't say Merry Christmas. We can't do all of these things. And one of the things I always look at them and say, look, our national motto is "In God We Trust." Do you have that up in your home? Do you have it up in your office? And most people have not done that. So we launched an effort here in Congress. We will have 100 offices, including both Democrats and Republicans, including Majority Leader and Minority Leader and Speaker of the House, who will put a large plaque of "In God We Trust" up in their office. And then we're going to launch that effort across the country, Kirby, and other state legislatures, government buildings, private businesses, because if we put it up on that wall, then you can't look to a little child and say, you can't say God in school. You can't say God in this room. And symbols and words do mean something. You're absolutely right with that phrase.
Talking with Representative Randy Forbes, and let me just mention some of the resources we have posted on the website. One of his pieces he wrote a while back, "In God We Still Trust," and you might want to read that. We also have a link to his website, forbes.house.gov, and I would really encourage you to get some of that information. And let's, if we can, for just a minute, talk about legislative actions, because so often around this program, and especially on Fridays when we have a Kelly Shackelford, if Kelly Shackelford's not here, we'll get a Jay Sekulow or get a Craig Parsh or whatever. We oftentimes talk about religious liberty, but it's almost always in the courts. What I think you're talking about here, Representative Forbes, is what can be done through the legislature and what we can do through community action individually to make a difference. Can you maybe speak to that? Because it seems to me that we just unintentionally so emphasize the courts, and the courts are certainly a place where we have to defend religious liberty, but I think there's a lot we can do even if we're not lawyers or even if we're not judges.
You know, Kirby, you're exactly right. Thomas Jefferson had an interesting thing that he did in his life. He wrote this broad brush of the Declaration of Independence, talking about a creator giving us our rights. But then he also sent a letter later on where he talked about liberty was something that you had to gain in inches. And I think sometimes we forget as Christians that the liberals oftentimes take away our freedoms, not always in broad brushes, but sometimes inch by inch by inch until you look around and say, oh my gosh, look what happened. Well, we don't like to do the same thing. So let's take, for example, a case like Greece versus Galloway. We win that case, and then we want to go celebrate and say, now we don't need to do anything else. That ought to really be like a check valve that says, okay, we've gotten this far, we're going to hold it, but now let's fight to make sure we're getting those prayers in. Our school boards, our city councils, those kind of things, and to be offensive instead of always on the defense. And like you mentioned with Kelly and Jay, they do wonderful work, but we're not going to win these battles by just playing defense. We've got to go back offensively, and that's why getting "In God We Trust" up in our homes and our buildings, you know, those kind of things are vitally, vitally important. And one last thing they can do, you know, if you have any group that doesn't let you do that prayer, in almost every local city council school board, they will have a public comment period where you can go in for about 60 seconds or 2 minutes or 3 minutes and make a comment. We've got a list of hundreds of prayers that have been offered on the floor of the House and the Senate. They almost all finish in the name of Jesus Christ, amen. They can walk in and say, Mayor, I would like to make a comment, and then they're recognized. They say, on May 18th or March 18th, 1948, Peter Marshall on the floor of the Senate said, blank, 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 quote it, and say, I'd like for this to be a part of the record. That's the kind of offensive effort we need to launch across the country.
Very good. Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll continue our conversation in just a few more minutes with Representative Randy Forbes. If you'd like to join our conversation today, 1-800-351-1212. He is the chairman of the Congressional Prayer Caucus. Another piece that I thought you might want to know more about is the blog of the Prayer Congress, and certainly one of the things that is actually posted there in the Prayer Caucus is the Pledge of Allegiance being affirmed, and also maybe looking at how we can inch by inch win, but also how we've lost incrementally. The attempts, for example, to ban the flag folding recitations at military funerals that we've talked about with Kelly Shackelford, or the attempt to remove "In God We Trust" from one of the coins that was being minted. There are some very important issues we're going to talk about still, but if you'd like to join that conversation today, we'll give you that opportunity. Representative Randy Forbes, representing the 4th District in Virginia. He's been there since 2001, and certainly the stalwart defender of religious liberty, the chairman of the Congressional Prayer Caucus. We'll come back and continue our conversation with him and you right after this.
Now, back to Point of View. your listener-supported source for truth.
Continue our conversation today with Representative Randy Forbes, representing the 4th District in the state of Virginia, individual that taught Sunday school for over 20 years, one of the few members of Congress I would allow teach my own Sunday school class. There are a few others that I can think of, and certainly brings a great deal of theological perspective and historical perspective. This really trying to counter the attempt to sanitize the public arena, to really, in a sense, have a naked public square, and appreciate his stand on these issues of religious liberty. But while we're talking about this, it does seem to me that we've seen some of those incremental approaches. Let's not have "In God We Trust" on all the coins that are minted by the U.S. Mint, for example. Let's not make a big deal about any kind of religious heritage, because after all, Representative Forbes, we don't want to offend people that might be atheists or agnostics. Your thoughts about that?
Well, you're right, Kirby. In fact, the Blandensburg cross case in Prince County, Maryland, is just that. It's a cross that's on the side of the road, and the American Humanist Association filed a lawsuit, and in that lawsuit they argue that the reason it should be up there is because the cross upsets them. And they do not wish to see it. Well, the whole purpose of the First Amendment was not to keep people from being upset when somebody said something they didn't like, but it was to protect the right of people to say what they believed in saying. And it was the same was true with our religious expressions and our religious freedoms. And that's what's been turned on its ear today, and we've got to go back to protecting that. So when you get a situation, Kirby, where we actually had in Congress here, where we can fly flags over the Capitol, yes, and we can do certifications on that for years. You can put whatever you want on that certification. But a Boy Scout that wanted to just put on that certification to my grandfather, who taught me to love my God, my country, and my family. The architect of the Capitol refused to allow that because it said God on it. And the member of Congress who represented this young man came to me with it. I met with the architect of the Capitol for several hours, and he actually said the Pledge of Allegiance could not even be on a flag certificate because it contained the word God. Whoa. Well, this is where your viewers can really do something. Speaker Pelosi, who was in the speaker, supported the architect of the Capitol. This happened on Friday. We launched an effort across the country, and I think they received about 2.4 million emails by Thursday, and they backed off and said, okay, let's put it back on. That's what your listeners, that's what you, me, have to do if we're going to turn this around in the country.
I do remember that we launched that. I don't know how many of those came from Point of View listeners, but there were certainly some. And another one that reminds me of that is one that we've talked about with Kelly Shackelford. He'll be again with us on Friday, and that has to do with the Veterans Affairs. It's interesting because we've been talking about the VA, but right now we want to look back at one in which they were actually prohibiting these flag folding recitations, in which again there were some religious statements, and again that individual with the VA said, no, can't do that, can't have any kind of religious sentiment at a military funeral at a time when you've got crosses all over Arlington Cemetery. Isn't
that ironic? And Kirby, that one, by the way, too, to point out, was voluntary. In other words, yes, this is when one of our veterans, in a voluntary basis, could have a flag-folding ceremony. There were 13 steps to that. One of them related to God, and the VA said, no, you can't do it. Once again, though, when they got pushback from people across the country, transparency on it, they quickly pulled back. We had the Navy, for example, that issued a memorandum that said you couldn't bring a Bible in a military hospital, even if you were a pastor and even if the patient wanted you to bring it in. They pulled back off of that. But it requires us all to be vigilant, to be transparent, and then to take a stand, and we can turn this around.
Let's talk about one more positive just before we let you go, and this was posted on the Prayer Caucus blog about 10 days ago, and it comes from a ruling from the Supreme Judicial Court of Massachusetts. By the way, this is the same court that gave us same-sex marriage, but at least in this case, the Supreme Judicial Court of Massachusetts upheld the constitutionality of the phrase "under God" in the Pledge of Allegiance. And that is significant because you know as well as I do that Americans United for the Separation of Church and State, or Freedom from Religion Foundation, or whatever, are always trying to get "under God" out of the Pledge of Allegiance.
And there's no question about that, and we've had these suits all over. To have that Massachusetts court make that ruling was huge. But, Kirby, we can never lose sight of the fact that what these folks really want to do, it's not that all of this upsets them. It's that they really want to take faith out of the marketplace of ideas in this country. They want to take faith out of the public realm of this country. They want to take faith out of the DNA of this country. And if we allow that to happen, this country will be so transformed that our children and grandchildren will never recognize it. But I'm optimistic that that's not going to happen, because I think people of faith are going to stand up and say, we're not going to go quietly into the night.
Just before we let you go, Representative Randy Forbes, talk about what people can find at your website or at the Congressional Prayer Caucus, because there's some great resources. And whenever you need us to encourage our listeners to write a letter, send an email, make a phone call, you know we've got a lot of activists listening, and certainly we recognize that there are things that even our listeners can do to defend religious liberty. They don't just have to support some of these lawyers and other advocates in the courts. There are certainly things we can do to stand for religious liberty, and tell them how they can use some of the resources that you have, both at your website and the Congressional Prayer Caucus, to be more effective.
Well, Kirby, first of all, I thank you for all the great work you do, because that is so important. Secondly, one of the great things they get from the website and looking about the Prayer Caucus is encouragement, because many of these things you talked about today, many of these victories that are happening across the country, the mainstream media is never going to report them. So most of the viewers go around depressed and despondent because they don't think we're winning on any of these, and that's just not the case. Prayer Caucus is doing a lot of great stuff. People around the country doing things. They can find that and encourages them. And then the final thing is they can find what members of the Prayer Caucus are doing, what their own members are doing about faith issues, and then they can get in the harness and actually pick up that and carry it in their state. We're launching prayer caucuses in every state legislature across America. They can be a part of that, help that, bring it to their own state.
Well, again, chairman of the Congressional Prayer Caucus, let me encourage some of you activists to find that website. We have links on our website, pointofview.net, and encourage some of you maybe to talk to your state legislators so that they will have a state prayer caucus as well. Where would we be without Representative Randy Forbes? I appreciate you standing for these religious liberty issues, and I thank you for joining us today here on Point of View.
Kirby, thanks so much for having us, and thanks again for all you guys do.
Well, we look forward to the next opportunity. That's all we have for today. We certainly have covered a lot of issues, haven't we? We've talked about the March for Marriage. We've talked with Rebecca St. James, and, of course, we've talked with Representative Randy Forbes. And if that isn't enough, tomorrow we have our Friday weekend edition, and there are all sorts of topics we did not address today that we will address tomorrow. We mentioned the VA. We'll be back to that one. You can imagine that. And we have quite a number of other stories to cover as well. So I hope that you will join us on our weekend edition. And if you would like to call in with your comments, we'll take a lot more phone calls than we did today. We just simply had kind of a full bank of interviews and wanted to give you a chance to hear from those individuals. And if you missed some of it, or would like to hear it again, or would like to pass it on to someone else that might like to hear these interviews, you can simply go to our podcast button at pointofview.net, especially the interview we did with Rebecca St. James. If you know an abortion-minded individual, if perhaps you work at a pregnancy resource center and would like to have some of those resources, like to know more about the book, certainly that is the case. We have the trailer from the film, Sarah's Choice, on a website today, and you can click on that. Watch it. It takes about 2 minutes, and then you could hit the share button, put it on your Facebook page or your blog, and educate some other people about that. And, of course, we have the book, Sarah's Choice, which is on our Point of View store. In case you can't find it in your local bookstore, it's certainly getting wide exposure, but, again, it's just coming out. So it may be a week or two before you actually see it in the store, and if you want to get one early, or if you'd like to find one and actually pass it on to others, we have that available at the website, pointofview.net. As you go there, you're going to find a lot of resources today. All the information, for example, on this March for Marriage. If you are not signed up on that, please take the time to go to the articles and the web link section. Of course, the conversations we've had with Randy Forbes, and also, of course, some of the material that we have talked about with Rebecca St. James. You can find all of it on the website, pointofview.net. Hope you go there, and I hope that you will take the time to search around a little bit, find some of the books, articles, resources, videos, and apply those to your ministry, because we want to help you to be more effective in your community. Lots of action points today, so I hope you'll take the time to involve yourself in some of those, and I hope that you'll join us tomorrow on our Friday weekend edition. I want to thank Andrew, Catherine, and Gerald for their help behind the scenes. See you back here tomorrow.
You have been listening to Point of View. For materials offered on the program, please write to Point of View, Post Office Box 30. That's Box 30, Dallas, Texas 75221. Zip 75221. Or call our toll-free number 1-800-347-5151. That's 1-800-347-5151.
Point of View is produced by Point of View Ministries and is supported by your generous tax-deductible contributions.
I just thank God for y'all. I listen to you every day, truly. I wanted to thank y'all for everything you do each day to inform Christian families.